Good morning, sir.
Okay, I think today's class, I think your CR might have already informed you. So today, Dr. Marappa is busy and he will not be taking the class. So we have made some arrangements. Actually, Marappa had a class between 12 and 1, right? Marappa's class was between 12 and 1. So what I am doing is, so you will be having a lunch break between 12 and 1. So I'll be in class in between 1 and 2. So I'll be sending the Zoom link for between 12 and between 1 and 2 o'clock. Okay. So between 12 and 1, you will be having lunch break today. So between 1 and 2, I'll be handling a class in place of Marappa today. Okay. Today we'll continue with the history where we have stopped yesterday. So in 1939, All India Beekeepers Association was formed at Pune, and from this association, they publish a journal called Indian Bee Journal. So in 1939, All India Beekeepers Association was established at Pune, and from this from this association, they publish a journal called Indian Bee Journal. Similarly, in the year 1940, an entomologist by name Dr. T.V. Ramakrishna Iyer, so he published a book called Handbook of Economic Entomology for South India. So this book is available in library, in our GKVK library. So whenever you have a time, you can have a look at this book. And now we have this second edition, which is revised and published in 1963. So as you see in the slide, so this is the handbook of economic entomology for South India. Again, 1941, so CFC Beeson, he published the ecology and control of forest insects of India and neighboring countries. So this is the book, and he is CFC Beeson. So he published a book on forest insects. That is the ecology and control of forest insects of India and neighboring countries. So this is the contribution of CFC Beeson. And yesterday I was telling you, in 1944, the first batch of MSc Agri-Entomology was started at IRI, New Delhi. And this first batch, which was admitted in 1944, so they passed out in 1946 from IRI. So 1946 was the first batch of MSc Agricultural Entomology that passed out from IRI in 1946. So next, in the year 1946, so Directorate of Plant Protection, Quarantine and Storage, abbreviated as DPPQS. So this was established by Government of India at Faridabad in Haryana state. So this institute is mainly responsible for checking out the materials that come into the country and that go out of the country for any pest or diseases. So this head office is at Faridabad, Haryana. And later on in 1966, one more institute called as Central Plant Protection Institute, so abbreviated as CPPTI. It was established in it was established on August 28th in year 1966 at Hyderabad. So later on, this institute was renamed as National Plant Protection Training Institute. So in 1966, it was named as CPPTI, and later on it was renamed as NPPTI, National Plant Protection Training Institute. So the objectives of this institute was training the employees of Central Directorate of Plant Protection, which comes under Department of Agriculture and Cooperation, that is Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India. So to train the employees of Directorate of Plant Protection, so this institute was established. Later on, during 11th 5-year plan, that is in 2009, it was again renamed as NIPHM, that is National Institute of Plant Health Management, so which is located at Rajendra Nagar in Hyderabad. So nearer to Achararanga Agriculture University, now named as Pandit Jaishankar Agricultural University. So adjacent to this, we have this NIPHM. So the mandate of this NIPHM is to human resource development in plant protection and generating master trainers, subject matter specialists in plant protection for various states and union territories. So this is the building of NIPHM located at Hyderabad, that is in Rajendra Nagar. So the aim of this institute is to train master trainers and subject matter specialists in the field of plant protection. And later on in the year 1948, earlier it was Imperial Council of Agricultural Research, and now it is changed to Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that is ICAR, which is located at New Delhi. So in 1952, the first insecticide manufacturing industry was established at Rishira in West Bengal. So this factory was manufacturing one insecticide called as BHC. BHC means benzene hexachloride or hexachloroxide. So this was established in 1952. So later in 1953, the National Malarial Eradication Program came into existence. So during those periods, the mosquitoes were spreading this malaria disease. So to eliminate this malaria program, so National Malaria Eradication Program was came into existence. Similarly, in 1958, so the Defense Research and Development Laboratory, so they started working on insects for using for the purpose of defense. So to use the insects in defense, so this DRDL laboratory came into existence. And after that, there were some more books published by different entomologists. So in 1960, a book called The Desert Locust in India was published by Y.R. Rao. So this was a monograph called Desert Locust in India by Y.R. Rao. That is L. Shetty Ramachandra Rao. And later on, after 3 years, in 1963, so Hem Singh Pruthi, he published a book called as Textbook of Agricultural Entomology. So if you have the habit of going to library, so this book is also present in our GKVK library. And in 1968, a textbook called General Entomology was published by Dr. M.S. Money. So this is General Entomology. And later on in 1968, the government of India, it enacted an act called as Central Insecticide Act, but it came into enforce after 3 years during 1st January 1971. So whatever the insecticides or fungicides we are using today, so they have to be registered under this act at Faridabad in Haryana. So this is the Central Insecticide Act. Anyway, in the next course, you'll be studying in detail about this Central Insecticide Act. And later on, in 1969, Dr. S. Pradhan, he published a book called Insect Pests of Crops. So he published a textbook called Insect Pests of Crops. And in 1975, a book on applied entomology called Elements of Economic Entomology. So this was published by Dr. B. Vasantaraj David and V.V. Ramurthy. So V.V. Ramurthy is a well-known taxonomist of this country. So along with Vasantaraj David, so they did 8th edition of Elements of Economic Entomology, which is useful for applied entomology course. Similarly, in 1969, a monograph on Indian Thysanoptera was published by Dr. T.N. Anantakrishnan. So especially there are insects called as thrips, which are major pests nowadays. So on this thrips, this monograph called Indian Thysanoptera was published by Dr. T.N. Ananta Krishnan. So later on in 1975, one more book called as Insects and Mites of Crops in India was published by M.R.G.K. Nair. So M.R.G.K. Nair, so he published a book called as Insects and Mite Crops in India. And one more book called General and Applied Entomology was published by Dr. Vasantraj David and T.N. Anantakrishnan in the year 1976. So these are some of the good books for referring for the course Applied Entomology, especially for the next course. This book will help you very much. And in 1988, one more institute called National Center for Integrated Pest Management. So it was established by ICR at New Delhi in 1988. So the mandate of this institute was to develop and promote IPM technologies for major crops. So IPM means Integrated Pest Management Technologies for various crops, so as to sustain higher crop yields with minimum ecological implication. So nowadays, since we are using pesticides, so the pesticides have major side effects on human beings. So apart from insecticides, so which are the other control measures that can be used for management of insect pests? So these IPM technologies are developed for individual crops by this NC-IPM, that is National Center for Integrated Pest Management, which is located at New Delhi. And there is one more institute called as National Bureau of Agricultural Insect Resources. I think if you pass on the Bellary Road, so you have a near Hebbal, you have a bus stop called CBI. So opposite to CBI, this institute is located. So opposite next to veterinary college, we have this institute. So this institute was started in 1957 as a Commonwealth Institute of Biological Control, abbreviated as CIBC. So initially, this institute was started as Commonwealth Institute of Biological Control. So as the name indicates, so this institute works on biological control of insect pests. Later on in 1993, the CIBC was renamed as PDBC. So PDBC means Project Directorate of Biological Control. So in 1993, this Commonwealth Institute of Biological Control was renamed as Project Directorate of Biological Control, abbreviated as PDBC. Again, in the year 2009, again in the year 2009, so this PDBC was again renamed as NBAII, National Bureau of Agricultural Important Insects. But again, they changed the name in 2014. So this NBAI was again renamed as NBAIR. That is National Bureau of Agriculturally Important Resources. So in 1957, which was started as CIBC, today it has been renamed as NBAIR, National Bureau of Agricultural Important Resources. So this is the nodal agency for collection of insects and characterization of these insects, documentation of these insects, and conservation of insects, and exchange and utilization of agriculturally important resources, maybe between the states or between the country. So this institute works on both mites, insects, and also spiders. So nowadays we are talking about sustainable agriculture. So these insects, which are used in biological control for the purpose of sustainable agriculture. So this is the history of entomology, starting from in the 19th as well as 20th century. So in the country, we have insect collections mainly at three or four places. The first collections are present at IARI, that is in National Pusa Collections, that is situated in New Delhi. And also we have some insect collections at Zoological Survey of India, that is ZSI, Calcutta or Kolkata. And some of the insects related to forest are situated in FRI, that is Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. And at Bangalore, we have this National Bureau of Agriculturally Important Resources. So you also have insect collection at this institute. So whatever the insect collections that are present in these four institutes, they form basic material for identification of insects. So the collections of these four institutes form basic materials for identification of insects. So apart from this, we have one museum at Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, that is TNAU Insect Museum. So this is the first insect museum in India. So here they have insect collections since 1900. So whatever the insects that were collected since 1900, so they are deposited in this museum. So this museum was fully functional from year 2017. So here most of the school children visit this museum as a part of their educational tour. So even you might have a state tour where you have a chance to visit TNU, and you can have a visit to this insect museum. Next, in 1998, a scientist by name Dr. Subbarao, he published a book called A History of Entomology in India. So this is the book published by him in the history of entomology in India. So for whatever I have talked about history of entomology, so almost all the information is taken from this book. So he is Dr. B.R. Subbarao when he was about to retire. And this is the taxonomy lab which we have in our entomology department. So this is Dr. B.R. Subbarao. So recently he had visited our taxonomy lab at entomology department, GKVK, and he's having an interaction with other scientists. So here you find one more taxonomist called Dr. C.A. Viraktamat. So he was a taxonomist of our entomology department. So far we have studied the entomology in India. So now we will have a look at the entomologist of Karnataka state. The entomologist of Karnataka state. So one entomologist even today we remember is Dr. Leslie C. Coleman. So in the year 1908, he was appointed as a mycologist and entomologist to the government of Mysore. So today we have a state called Karnataka. Earlier, the Karnataka state was called as government of Mysore. So in government of Mysore in 1908, so he was the first mycologist and entomologist. And in 1913, he became the first director of agriculture in Mysore state. So he was a first director of agriculture in Mysore state in 1913. So whatever the university GKVK is studying today, earlier this university was situated in Hebbal. So before in the Hebbal bus stop, you have a Karnataka State Seed Corporation. So behind this Karnataka State Seed Corporation, we have a agricultural school. So before GKVK, the agricultural school, it was started at Hebbal by this Leslie Coleman at that time. So that agricultural school, which was opened by him, is today well grown and established as the University of Agricultural Sciences, Bangalore. And in 1925, so Leslie Coleman, so he established one research station for coffee called as Coffee Experimental Station, which is located at Balehonur near Sringeri. So if you have a chance of visiting Sringeri, you can visit this coffee experimental station at Balehonur. So he was the first man who did some work on entomology in Karnataka. So later on, Dr. M. Puttarudraya from 1909 to 1983. So he was the entomologist appointed government of Karnataka. So whenever you go to agricultural college, so in front of the agriculture, you have a garden. So in the center of the garden, you have a statue. So that statue is nothing but it is a statue of Dr. M. Puttarudraya. So next time when you are walking in the garden of agricultural college, in front of agriculture college, so have a look at this statue. So this statue is Dr. M. Puttarudraya. So he was the first director of instruction at agricultural college. So earlier it was called as director of instruction. Today it is renamed as dean undergraduate. So dean undergraduate today was earlier called as director of instruction. So Dr. Puttarudraya, he was the first director of instruction. And he was specialized in biological control of crop pests and weeds. So he is Dr. M. Puttarudraya. He was basically from Magadi. So Magadi is attached to Bangalore. And he has published some books related to entomology in Kannada language. So if you go to library, so we have this Kannada books published by him. So you can have a look at these books. So this is the contribution of Dr. M. Puttarudraya. Next entomologist is Dr. G.P. Channabaswarna. So he succeeded Dr. M. Putrudraya as a entomologist to government of Karnataka. So you can see the photo of Dr. G.P. Channabaswamy. So he's a well-known taxonomist, and also he's specialized on mites. So later on, Dr. G.K. Viresh, so he contributed a lot to soil insects, especially the white grubs, which are a major pest of crops like sugarcane and other arachid and other crops. So under his tenure, he had organized national and international conferences related to entomology, and he was also vice chancellor of US Bangalore some 3 4 vice chancellors. And recently we have Dr. C.A. Viraktamat. So he has contributed a very lot to taxonomy, especially on leafhopper taxonomy. And after his retirement, he was working as a emeritus professor. So this is Dr. C.A. Viraktamat, who is specialized in leafhopper taxonomy. So this is about history of entomology in India, as well as history of entomology in Karnataka. So this is all about the history of entomology. So next we are going to the classification of insects, or position of class insecta in animal kingdom. So if you take the hierarchical classification of organisms, so I think all of you are aware. At the topmost hierarchical position, we have kingdom, and the kingdom are divided into different phyla, that is phylum, and the phylum are further classified into classes, and below the classes we have orders, and under the orders we have different families. So under family we have genus and species. So I already have told you Carl von Linnaeus in 1758. So he gave the binomial nomenclature of naming the organisms. For example, if you take human beings, that is Homo sapiens. So human beings come under the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order primates, family Hominidae, genus Homo, and species Sapiens. So in this way, human beings, Homo sapiens, can be classified in this scientific way. So this was the classification of Dr. So, for example, if you take the classification of insects, so if you take the classification of insects, for example, this is a spruce budworm. This is a spruce budworm. So the scientific name is Coristoneura fumiferana. So Coristoneura is the genus name. Fumiferana is the species name. So if you take the classification of this insect, so it comes under kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta, order Lepidoptera, family Tortricidae, genus Coristoneura, species Fumiferana. So in this way, we can classify different organisms into different kingdoms, phylums, classes, orders, family, etc. So this is the hierarchical classification of organisms in general and particular to insects. So coming to the position of insects in animal kingdom. So we'll start with the basic classification. So if you take any organism, so the organisms can be classified based on the presence or absence of nucleus. So if the nucleus is absent, then they are called as prokaryotes. If the nucleus is present, then they are called as eukaryotes. So any organisms can be basically classified based on the presence or absence of nucleus. So if nucleus is absent, they are considered as prokaryotes. If the nucleus is present, they are called as eukaryotes. Again, these eukaryotes are further classified into unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. So as the name uni indicates, these organisms, they are made up of single cell. So as the name multi indicates, these organisms, they are made up of multi cells. So under unicellular organisms, we get protista and monera. So the microorganisms, we get protista and monera. Similarly, the multicellular organisms, based on the presence of cell wall or absence of cell wall, they are further classified into two types. That is, the organisms with cell walls, the organisms without cell walls. So under the organisms without cell walls, we have kingdom Animalia. So when you come to the organisms with cell walls, so they are further classified based on the ability to perform photosynthesis. So if they don't have ability to perform photosynthesis or prepare their own food, they are called as fungi. That is, if they are not able to produce their own food or prepare their own food, they are called as fungi. And if they are able to perform photosynthesis and prepare their own food, then they are called as plantae. So remember, the organisms are initially classified into kingdom Protista, kingdom Monera, kingdom Animalia, kingdom Plantae, and kingdom Fungi. So this is the criteria used for the presence or absence of nucleus, whether they are unicellular or multicellular, whether they have cell wall or not cell wall, whether they can perform photosynthesis or not photosynthesis. They can be classified into five kingdoms: Protista, Monera, Animalia, Plantae, and fungi. So for this course, we will be mainly concentrating on kingdom Animalia. Since insects come under kingdom Animalia, we will be concentrating on the classification of kingdom. Yeah. So if you take a kingdom, so below kingdom we have phylums, we have phyla. So under kingdom Plantae we have 12 phyla. Under kingdom Plantae we have 12 phyla. Under kingdom Animalia we have 35 phyla. So we will not be studying all the 35 phyla. We will be studying important phyla related to insects in this course. So if you take kingdom Animalia, so it can be divided into two divisions. So invertebrata and vertebrata. So invertebrata are the organisms without backbones. So if they don't have backbones, then they are called as invertebrata. So if they have backbones, then they are called as vertebrata. So but for today's course, we are very much interested these under invertebrates. So if you take invertebrates, we will have listed some important phylums related to insects. So I think in PUC you might have studied this phylum Porifera, which includes sponges. Then we have phylum Coelenterata, which has jellyfish, hydra, and corals. Then we have phylum Ctenophora, which are commonly called as comb jellies. Then we have the Platyhelminthes, which includes flatworms and tapeworms. Then we have Ascalminthes, which are also called as nematoda. The examples are Ascaris and Uchraria. Similarly, we have Annelida, where we have earthworms and leeches. And we have Onychophora. Onychophora, the examples are peripatus and velvet worms. But in this course, we are very much interested in phylum Arthropoda. So under phylum Arthropoda, we have insects, spiders, mites, ticks, crabs, scorpions, centipedes, millipedes, etc. So among all the phyla, phylum Arthropoda is the largest. So next to Arthropoda, we have phylum Mollusca, which includes snails and slugs. Then we have Echinoderma, which has starfish and sea urchins. And next we have Hemichordata and Chordata. So for this course, we'll be studying phylum Arthropoda, and this phylum Arthropoda evolved from Annelida and Onychophora. So last class, when I was telling about evolution of insects, so I was telling that insects have evolved from worm-like organisms that come under Annelida. So between Annelida and Arthropoda, we have Onychophora. So this Onychophora shares some of the characteristics of Annelida and some of the characteristics of phylum Arthropoda. So we will not be studying in detail about all these phyla, but I'll be stressing on Onychophora and Arthropoda. So if you take the characteristic features of phylum Arthropoda, phylum Onychophora. So this phylum Onychophora, it acts as a link between Annelida and Arthropoda. So Annelida means earthworms and leeches. Arthropoda means insects and others. So these Onychophora, they share some of the characteristics of Annelida and some of the characteristics of Arthropoda. So some of the characteristics of Annelida are shared by Onychophora. Some of the characteristic features are shared by Arthropoda. So the important characteristics, these are, as you see in the diagram, these are elongate and worm-like body. So elongate and worm-like body is a characteristics of Annelida. So this characteristic is shared by Onychophora. And this is covered by thin, flexible, chitinous cuticle. So chitinous cuticle is the characteristics of phylum Arthropoda. So this characteristic is shared from Arthropoda by Onychophora. So here, if you look into the diagram, this is the head region. This is the head region. So the head segments are comparatively smaller. So if we compare with the other body segments, the head segments are smaller in size. So in Onychophora, the head has three segments. In Onychophora, the head has three segments, but in Arthropoda, the head may have five or six segments. But in majority of the cases, the insect head is made up of six head segments. Whereas in other arthropods, you may have five segments. And here segmentation is indistinct. So if you look in the body, you don't find a clear-cut body segmentation on the external surface. So here segmentation is indistinct on the external surface of the body. And here you have numerous unjointed stumpy walking legs. If you look in the diagram, you have numerous legs, and this leg is unjointed, and it is somewhat stumpy and used for walking purpose. But remember, in arthropods you have jointed legs. In arthropods you have jointed legs, but in Onychophora they have unjointed legs. So the example is peripatus. So these are the characteristic features of phylum Onychophora. So now coming to the classification of phylum Arthropoda into different classes. Classification of phylum Arthropoda into different classes. So there are two classifications of phylum Arthropoda. In one of the classifications, they classify phylum Arthropoda into five subphyla. So in one of the classification, they classify phylum Arthropoda into five subphyla. The first one is subphylum Trilobita. So these Trilobita, they are extinct now. That means they have disappeared from the Earth's surface. You no more find this subphylum Trilobita. So the existing ones are these four subphylums. So the second subphylum is Chelicerata. Third one is Crustacea. Fourth one is Myriapoda. Fifth one is Hexapoda. So in one of the classification, earlier classification, phylum Arthropoda is subdivided into five subphyla: Trilobita, Chelicerata, Crustacea, Myriapoda, and Hexapoda. So under each phylum you have classes. Under each phylum you have classes. So under Chelicerata you have a class Arachnida, which includes these spiders, mites, ticks, scorpions, etc. So under crustaceans, we have crustaceans like crabs, lobsters, prawns, etc. So under myriapoda, we have a class Chiropoda that includes centipedes. And we have a diplopoda, which includes millipedes. But for our interest is class insecta, which comes under hexapoda. Remember, hexa means six, poda means legs. So hexapoda means six-legged insects. So all the insects are six-legged. So this was the earlier classification where they divided phylum Arthropoda into five subphyla. The second classification where they classified phylum Arthropoda into four subphyla. So the classification was, the first one is phylum Trilobita, which are extinct today. We don't find this one. So secondly, it was classified into Uniramia. Uniramia. Third one was Chelicerata. Fourth one was Crustacea. So under Uniramia, we have class Chilopoda, we have class Diplopoda, we have class Insecta. Under Chelicerata, we have class Arachnida. Under Crustacea, we have all crustaceans like crabs, prawns, and lobsters. So remember, under first classification, insects are based under phylum Hexapoda. Under second classification, insects are based under phylum Uniramia. So remember, insects, they may come under phylum Uniramia or phylum Hexapoda. So according to earlier classification, insects come under phylum Hexapoda, whereas latest classification, the insects come under Uniramia. So this is the classification of phylum Arthropoda into different classes. So coming to the position of class Insecta in animal kingdom, position of class Insecta in animal kingdom. So as I told you, insects come under kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda. As earlier slide I showed you, subphylum, it may be Uniramia or Hexapoda, and class is class Insecta. So this is all about the position of class Insecta in animal kingdom. So based on the type of mouth parts, we can classify phylum Arthropoda into two subphyla. So based on the type of mouth parts, we can classify phylum Arthropoda into two subphyla. So subphylum Chelicerata, subphylum Mandibulata. So this is the classification based on the type of mouth parts, Chelicerata and Mandibulata. So under Chelicerata, you have class Arachnida, which includes spiders, mites, scorpions, etc. Under Mandibulata, you have class Chilopoda, Diplopoda, Crustacea, and Insecta. So remember, Insecta come under subphylum Mandibulata based on the type of mouth parts. So how can you differentiate Chelicerata from Mandibulata? So how can you distinguish Chelicerata from Mandibulata? As the name Chelicerata includes, the mouth part consists of a pair of chelicera. So if you look in the diagram, these are the pair of chelicera which are located in the foremost region. So behind the chelicera, you have a pair of pedipalps. Pedipalps. And in case of mandibulata, as the name indicates, you have a pair of mandibles. You have a pair of mandibles. And also, apart from that, you may have a pair or two pairs of antenna. So, Chelicerata have a pair of chelicera and a pair of pedipalp. Chelicera is the foremost appendage, pedipalp is the back appendage. And here, antenna are the foremost appendages that may be one or two in number. Mandibles are present behind the antenna. So these mandibles are using for tearing or cutting the food. So based on the type of mouth parts, phylum Arthropoda is classified into subphyla Chelicerata and subphyla Mandibulata. So insects come under subphylum Mandibulata. So here, like annelids, arthropods have segmented bodies. So like annelids, arthropods have segmented bodies. But some of their segments, they have fused into tagmata in the course of evolution. For example, in insects, the first six segments, they are fused to form called as head. The second three segments, they are fused to form what is called as thorax. And the rest of the segments, they fuse to form what is called as abdomen. So, in the course of evolution, segments united to form tagmata. So, there are three tagmata in insect body. The first tagmata is head region. The second tagmata is thorax region. The third tagmata is abdominal region. So these crustaceans differ from insects, but they resemble centipedes and millipedes. So crustaceans, they differ from insects, but they resemble centipede and millipedes. That is, here in the abdomen they have appendages. So crustaceans in the abdomen they have appendages, whereas insects in the abdominal region you don't find any appendages. So these are the similarities or differences with other related phylums. So next, coming to the characteristic features of phylum Arthropoda. Characteristic features of phylum Arthropoda. Remember, arthro means jointed. Arthro means jointed. Poda means appendages. Poda means appendages. So as the name indicates, arthropoda, that is jointed appendages. So insects with jointed appendages, they come under phylum Arthropoda. So the appendages, it may be mouth parts, or it may be antenna, or it may be legs, etc. So as I told you, arthro means joint, poda means legs. So these insects, they have jointed legs or jointed appendages. So the first characteristic features of phylum Arthropoda is body segmentation. The first characteristic feature of phylum Arthropoda is body segmentation. So in case of phylum Arthropoda, the body is divided into number of segments. Each segment is called as somite or Each segment is called as metamer. So in arthropoda, the body is divided into number of segments. The segment is technically called as somite or metamer. And these segments, they may be often fusing into two or three body regions. If it is two body regions, then it is called as cephalothorax and abdomen. If it is three body regions, then it is called as head, thorax and abdomen. So the segments may be divided into two regions, that is cephalothorax and abdomen, or in some cases head and trunk. But in insects, it is head, thorax and abdomen. The second characteristic feature of phylum Arthropoda is presence of exoskeleton or integument. Presence of exoskeleton or integument. So exoskeleton is nothing but it is the outer skin of the arthropods. Outer skin of the arthropods. So this is rich in a substance called as chitin. So this is rich in a substance called chitin, and the skin of arthropod is periodically shed and renewed. So remember, in case of human beings, we have internal skeleton. In case of human beings, our skeleton is internal skeleton. But in insects, it is exoskeleton. Exoskeleton. The third feature of phylum Arthropoda is bilateral symmetry. The third one is bilateral symmetry. So here the body is divided into two equal halves. Bilateral means the body may be divided into two identical halves. That is left half and right half. So here whatever the structures that are present on the right half, they are also present on the left half. For example, you have antenna on left side, we have antenna on right side. Similarly, we have left compound eye and right compound eye. Similarly, we have legs on three legs on left side, three legs on right side. You have two pairs of wings on left side and two pair of wings on right side. So this is what is called as bilateral symmetry. So bilateral symmetry means the body can be cut into two halves. Whatever the appendages you find on the left half, you find on the right half. So this is also called as a mirror image. And the next one is jointed appendages. Jointed appendages. So each segment bears a pair of appendages. They may be purpose or locomotion. So feeding purpose means mouth parts of insects. So whatever the mouth parts you have on left side, the same mouth parts you have on the right side. So for locomotion means you have two pairs of wings and three pairs of legs. And the next one is the type of circulatory system. The type of circulatory system. So in insects, we have open circulatory system. But in case of human beings, we have a closed circulatory system. So closed circulatory system means the blood will flow through tubes called as arteries or veins or capillaries. So in closed circulatory system, blood flows through arteries, veins or capillaries. But in case of insects, we have an open circulatory system where the blood circulates in body cavity called as hemocoel. So the blood circulates in the body cavity called as hemocoel. So the parts of the circulatory system is called as dorsal blood vessel. So the circulatory system in insects is called as a dorsal blood vessel, which consists of two parts called as aorta and heart. And coming to the digestive system or alimentary canal. Digestive system or alimentary canal. So here the digestive system is tube-like, and it starts from the mouth and end in the anus region. And next we have a decentralized nervous system. So we have a nervous system that is called as a decentralized nervous system. So decentralized nervous system means we have a brain which is also called as supraesophageal ganglia, and this brain is located to the dorsal region of the alimentary canal in the head region. So remember, the brain is situated in the dorsal side of the alimentary canal in the head region, whereas the rest of the nervous system is located on the ventral side of the alimentary canal. So decentralized means the brain, which is called as supraesophageal ganglia, is located dorsal to the alimentary canal in the head region, whereas the rest of the nervous system or rest of the ganglia, they are located ventral to the alimentary canal in the thorax and abdomen. So the next characteristic feature of arthropoda is growth. So growth always occurs through a process called as molting. So most of you might have seen snakes. So snakes usually shed out their skin. ಸೊ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಪೊರೆ ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅದೇ ಥರ ಇನ್ಸೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ದೇ ಶೆಡ್ ದೇರ್ ಓಲ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ನ್ಯೂ skin. That means insects can only grow once they shed the old skin and form the new skin. And next feature is with respect to muscles. Next feature is with respect to muscles. So insects have striated muscles. Insects have striated muscles that are attached to the body wall, and they help in the movement of the body parts. And next one is excretion. Next one is excretion. So excretion is by means of malphizian tubules that are present attached to the alimentary canal. So excretion is by means of malphizian tubules. So these malphizian tubules empty the waste products into the alimentary canal. And lastly the respiration. So arthropods they may respire through trachea, and these trachea open to outside through small openings called as spiracles. So anyway, we will be studying these systems in detail in future classes. You will be coming to know more about respiration, excretion, muscles, etc. in future classes. So this is about the classification of insects, that is classification of phylum Arthropoda, position of insects in phylum Arthropoda. I think we have finished 1 hour. So what earlier at the starting of the class I told you is, so since today your the cytogenetics teacher is busy with some program, so he is not able to take the class. So he has requested me to handle the class from 12 to 1. So but I am busy from 12 to 1. So what I'll do is, so now I'll give a lunch break from 12 to 1. So we'll be having a lunch break from 12 to 1. So I'll send a Zoom link so that we'll start the class at 1 and finish by 2 o'clock. Is it okay?
Okay.
So much.
Yes.
Or shall we? I think you have a horticulture class at 2 p.m., right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think he may require 5 or 10 minutes early for scheduling the class. What we'll do is, I'll start at 12:45 and finish by 1:45. Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Since he has to schedule the class, he may need 10 minutes for scheduling class. So what I'll do is, I'll send the Zoom link for 12:45 p.m. So we'll start at 12:45 p.m. and we'll end the class by 1:45 p.m. So now you can have your lunch and finish by 12:45. So 12:45 I'll be taking a 1 hour lecture class of entomology, from 12:45 to 1:45.
Okay,
Okay?
sir.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.